Let me say a little bit about the circular economy before we hear from the panelists. The average American produces 4.9 pounds of trash per day. Out of this, nearly 2.5 pounds will end up in landfills. In Philadelphia, over 75% of residential waste goes to landfills. So our economy has been designed to be linear. We extract resources, make use of them, produce products, and then just use them and discard them. We turn natural resources into products that are ultimately destined to become waste because of the way they've been designed and manufactured. And the statistics on this are daunting. Americans, on average, throw away the following on an annual basis. So we throw away around 80 billion pounds of food, around 25 billion styrofoam coffee cups, and around 100 billion plastic bags. And that's on an annual basis. So with only 8.7% of plastic being recycled and food making up 22% of municipal solid waste, there's actually a lot that we can do to make our economy more circular by, for example, reducing or eliminating waste, repurposing and reusing products. In Philly, the goal of building a circular economy is gaining steam with several local startups and organizations involved and kind of at the forefront of this effort. Varying in scope, business model, and target market, these organizations are working toward the shared goal of decreasing the amount of waste lost to landfills in the Philadelphia area. So today, we're going to hear from three of these companies, The Rounds, Rabbit Recycling, and Circle Compost. And these companies are at the forefront of developing these new circular economy models. We'll focus in the discussion on how to create a circular economy, the role of the individual in making circular choices, and the factors that are driving and holding back its development at the local level. Now I want to turn it over to our panelists, and we'll hear first from Jessica Casal and Evan Abel from The Rounds.
Thank you, Brian, for that introduction and for the background of the circular economy. Very excited to have you guys all here today. My name is Jess, and I work with The Rounds, a local startup company that we're going to tell you more about in a moment. Do you guys have the feature on the bottom of your Zoom panel to do reactions? Because I'd love to see reactions from everybody if you have heard of The Rounds before. So Wharton founded company, so I would think a lot of you have heard of us. But I'm Jess, I'm the marketing manager for The Rounds. I'm here with Evan. Evan, you could do a quick intro, and then we're going to go into our presentation about what The Rounds is.
Great, thanks Jessica, and thank you Brian. Great to be here. I'm fairly new to The Rounds, just a few months in. I lead our service design team, and so we are planning what the future of The Rounds is and is not. So partnering with a bunch of the other folks in this panel and looking forward to making some waves.
Yes. All right, so to give you a little bit of background of what The Rounds is, we are a zero waste delivery service for your everyday essentials, and we were started here in Philly. Our mission is to make everyday sustainable choices effortless, because the most common barriers to sustainability tend to be convenience and accessibility and cost. And so our service is bringing this really convenient solution to reducing your packaging waste right to your door through this closed loop, circular way of delivering your everyday essentials, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But I think it's always really helpful to tell stories when we're telling our mission and our focus. And so a little bit background about who we are. The Rounds was started by these two guys, Bungwoo Ko on the left and Alex Torrey on the right. The story goes that Alex and Bungwoo were both Wharton MBA students, figuring out what they wanted to do with their life, which many of you may be doing. And Alex is a busy professional, a student. He was using hand soap, as many of us do, and he was like pumping out the very last drop of the hand soap in his bathroom. And then he realized, dang, I have to go get more hand soap. This is annoying. I don't have time. So he decided to order from Amazon because it was like a last minute decision. He forgot about the hand soap and he needed it immediately. He gets the delivery to his big high-rise apartment in Center City, and the delivery comes in a cardboard box inside of another box inside of plastic wrap, and then it's a plastic bottle. And so then he takes all of this packaging out, throws it to the side, gets the plastic hand soap, and then replaces it with another perfectly good hand soap bottle that is also made of plastic that will be thrown out into this recycling system that is frankly broken. In that moment was when he had the light bulb go off in his head and thought about the rounds and thought, there's got to be a better way for people in the city to get the stuff they use every day without all of the unnecessary packaging waste, because he's just one human in a building of 500 other people. So imagine every single person getting that individual delivery. There has to be a better, more efficient and more sustainable way to do this. And so that was when the idea of the rounds was born. We were originally called Milkman. Some of you might remember our brand back in the day. Bungwoo Ko, operations genius. He was on the team at Uber Eats. They teamed together and they created the rounds. And so the rounds is a delivery service for your everyday essentials. We keep you stocked with the stuff you use on a daily basis. So that's going to be the boring stuff you always need, but you forget to shop for, like your toilet paper, toothpaste, cleaning supplies, olive oil, pantry staples, all these things. And so we deliver them to your door on autopilot without any of the waste that comes with other delivery services. And how we do this is through offering 100 different local and conventional household products. We go around the city on our electric bikes and deliver to every neighborhood once a week. And we're kind of like modern day milkman, because when we're bringing your next delivery to you, we pick up the empty containers. And that's a really cool example of the circular economy fashion of what we do. And then these are some of the products we offer. We're building this closed loop hyper-efficient commerce in cities, which Evan and I will talk more about. But for the sake of time, this is the membership dashboard that everyone gets access to. And we're going to just quickly run through this video and then turn it over to the rest of the panelists. So let me know if you guys can see this video. And let me know if you can hear it. We're going to go in.
Little decisions that you make every day can make a difference. When you and your neighbors do it and the entire city does it, it can make a big difference. Imagine if we all get our hand soap and our toilet paper and our household personal care pantry staples delivered to us on the same day at the same time with no boxes. In theory, that could work, right? There you go.
Thank you so much.
So the rounds is a zero waste refill and delivery service for the stuff you use every day. We literally make the rounds. So we drop off everything in reusable containers. Dog treats. We pick up your empties to put those back into the system with zero waste and in a much more sustainable way.
It's a no-brainer to me. I was really looking for a way to reduce waste while still getting the convenience and the products that I need. I was actually a milk delivery person myself in high school. So I was really excited to sign up and see that it was a sustainable alternative. They kind of learn how often I'm ordering these products. And so every week my order gets smarter. It feels great to know that I'm not polluting the streets and really helping our sanitation workers any way we can and helping the world.
Anybody in the city of Philadelphia can sign up for the rounds. We are expanding our radius as fast as possible. Ultimately, we think this can be very successful in every city in the US. It does feel to me like this is why I was put on this earth, is to build a startup like this. Despite putting in the long days, you go to bed, you sleep, you know that you're making a difference, and it feels great.
Thanks, guys. I hope that was a useful visual. Update since that video, we have expanded to Miami and Atlanta, Georgia as well. So the growth is continuing. For the sake of time, I won't play this video, but you should visit our Instagram at therounds.co to see some examples of our circularity with our local partners. We're going to talk more about this, but we're really different than other delivery services out there because of the sustainability aspect, the convenience. We're delivering to every neighborhood on the same day each week. We try to partner with local producers, which means you're stocking up from up the block, not around the world. And it's a personalized dashboard that you get access to customize when you're getting the products and exactly what you need. And with that, I'm going to send it over to whoever is next, but Wharton students get free membership to the rounds. So use code Wharton if you want to sign up. Thank you.
All right, next up is Matt Siegfried from Rabbit Recycling.
Hey everyone, thank you. I just need to get my screen shared right here and we'll get started. Can everybody see my screen? So first I'd like to thank the Penn Wharton Risk Center for inviting us for this important panel. My name is Matt Siegfried. I am a co-owner of Rabbit Recycling. Rabbit Recycling, we empower people to be better stewards of the earth. So how we do this is by providing residents and businesses in the greater Philadelphia region a subscription and on-demand service for hard to recycle materials. And this is from anything from styrofoam, bicycle tires, soft and rigid plastic, cork, e-waste, and the list goes on to fabrics, textile, and many other materials. So how Rabbit started is much like a lot of other businesses in a living room. It was my brother's idea. My brother Brian saw that there's these solutions to get plastic bags, to get batteries to different places. You can go to Target to drop stuff off. You can go to Batteries Plus Bulbs to get rid of light bulbs sustainably, but there wasn't an actual service that would provide a pickup or drop off solution that was convenient for customers. So he talked to neighbors, like-minded individuals that interested in sustainability, and he found out that this actually could be something that could take off. So the way we started this is we thought of the idea, unlike most recycling, it's not transparent. You don't know what, once you put your material out on a curb, you really don't know where it goes. You don't know how the process is completed. So we kind of changed that up and we said, well, why don't we tell our customers where everything goes, whether it's donated, upcycled, recycled, or reused by local artists. So beyond the actual recycling, we have one of the largest communities in the area of artists and hobbyists that can come to our shop, take materials, anything from textile, candle wax, yarn, anything that artists want to use that will stay out of a landfill. Our goal is to find local and sustainable solutions for this material. So we found that Philadelphia has such a huge base of people that are just looking to reuse. And we find that a lot of those customers also tend to be customers that use composting, like Circle used rounds. We found a lot of our customers were just really engaged with this sustainable community. So it's just worked out where we were able to find artists that would take the materials that other people no longer want. And the other aspect is our donatable side. We really pride ourselves on getting materials to the local community and what they need first. So we have outreach with homeless shelters, donation centers, prevention centers, women's designated centers, places that we can, instead of just sending things to a donation, a large facility where they go out to other nations or they go out regionally, we want to stick with trying to find needs and solutions that are available for people in the area. And we can really do that with what other people don't want. Right now, we currently operate in Philadelphia, Montgomery County, Delaware County, and a little bit of in the lower Bucks side. Our goal in the near future is to expand to Chester County and get more of Montgomery and Bucks County. Right now, we have a staff of 14 folks that are working hard every day to divert thousands of pounds of materials that could go to a landfill. They're all sustainably minded, whether it's the customer service, to the shop workers, to the drivers, to the artists that we work with. And it's really been an impact that you can see on a small scale, but it's really starting to take off and really make ripples throughout the area. So right now we're growing. We're really thrilled about the future. We're trying to invest in a material to help us recycle styrofoam, what's called a densifier. We're purchasing a baler. We're trying to expand to an additional facility, a couple more vehicles. And really, it's just because of the support in this area. And we're very happy and grateful for Penn Wharton Risk Center to allow us to come and speak at this event. And we look forward to reducing waste and working with all of you. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Matt. And last up is David Bluvman from Circle Compost.
Yes. 1 sec here. Share my screen. Hi, everyone. I'm David Bluvman. My wife, Michelle, and I co-founded Circle Compost. We are a food scrap and organic waste pickup service. Take those materials and make them into compost. Started the business in 2016 with a simple mission, and that's to prevent food scraps from going to landfills. Our goal is to make composting and sustainability easy and accessible to Philadelphia residents and businesses. We started the business to help solve a problem. Brian actually mentioned this number in his introduction to the panel, but in the USA alone, 80 billion pounds of food scraps, food waste, organic scraps go into landfills every year. In 2015, my wife, Michelle, and I, we were looking at a pie chart similar to the one on this slide that showed that around 30% of US landfill composition is food scraps and yard waste that we knew could be made into compost. So we thought, what can we do about this? And for anyone who doesn't, know the danger of food scraps going into landfills, when food scraps are thrown in the trash, end up in the landfill, they don't break down properly and they emit methane gas from those landfills, which is actually a lot more harmful for our environment than CO2 emissions. We hear a lot more about CO2 emissions, but methane is more harmful than CO2 emissions. It's a quick overview of what composting is for anyone on the call who doesn't know. Food scraps, other organic waste, instead of going into a trash can and ending up in a landfill, it can be broken down and made into compost. And compost is a soil amendment. You add it to your soil to help grow healthier plants. It adds nutrients and vitamins to the soil over time when it's used as a top layer. Also many other uses for compost. But composting, the process in general, you need a certain ratio of food waste, food scraps, which are nitrogen-based materials, and you add those to about 2 parts carbon-based materials, which are dry leaves, wood chips. And as long as you have those 2/3 to 1/3 ratio and you're adding the right amount of water and giving the piles the right amount of air, you can make compost. This next slide just shows different scales of compost piles. The top left shows a passively aerated pile. That's a pile that we manage at Novick Urban Farm, one of our partners. And you can see we've just stuck some perforated pipes into the pile to help allow for some air to enter the pile over time, passively. We also still have to turn the pile to add more air. The top right corner, you see a more actively aerated static pile where there are pipes under the pile and a blower attached that gets plugged in to blow air through the pile. That'll help a pile break down faster. Bottom left, you see much larger windrows. You can see larger industrial equipment used to turn those windrows. Then you see a kind of standard backyard or a garden tumbler. In the bottom right corner is some beautiful concrete bins that actually I was composting in those exact bins early on in our existence, but a condo was actually built on that small urban farm. So that's a challenge that some of our urban farm partners face. How Circle Compost works, we bring you a bucket. This top left corner here is an older bucket, but sometimes we just put them on the back of the bike to deliver them. Customer then puts food scraps into the bucket in their home. They place the bucket out front here, just a row home, putting it out on their stoop. They place it out the night before we come. We then come by with one of our e-assist bikes and trailers or one of our motorized vehicles, bring the material to a composting site where either we make it into compost or we stage it to be brought to a larger site in one of our other vehicles, gets made into compost, and we give back bags of finished compost to our customers. They get a certain amount each year, and then they can buy additional bags at a discounted rate if they want more. And they use that compost to help grow healthy plants. We started with just one bike, one trailer, and one customer. Now we have 3 e-bikes, 4 trailers, 3 trucks, and 1 van. This is a shot of some of our vehicles. The top right corner is actually the back of my car. When we started, kind of had to do anything, whatever we had to do to stage material that we picked up by bike and bring it to compost sites. Today we have about 1,900 customers. That's household customers specifically. 23 commercial accounts, which is down from 30 pre-pandemic. Our commercial business hasn't fully come back since the pandemic hit. Mainly smaller households among our 1,900 household customers. We've been adding about 30 to 50 household customers per month. Today we have 8 employees. We offer health benefits to our full-time employees, as well as a simple IRA retirement account. We added the retirement account option just this year. And right now we're doing 19 routes per week, so about 2 to 4 routes per day. Looking toward the future, we started out doing 100% of our pickups by bicycle. That percentage has come down, but we're constantly looking at our routes, seeing where we can break off pockets that are more dense and put those back on a bike route, and we'll continue to do that. Looking forward to continuing to collaborate between the city, businesses, and households. Need to add more composting sites. That's super important. It's critical, really, to add more composting sites in this region. More staging sites as well, areas where we can swap out full totes, bring full totes that we've filled up on bicycle routes and pick them up with a vehicle to bring them to a composting site, and continue to increase our marketing and customer engagement, as well as embrace technology and continue to improve our customer facing and back-end technology. Thank you so much to Wharton Risk Center for having us, and thanks to the other companies, both of whom we're partnered with, the Rounds and Rabbit Recycling, for being here as well. And looking forward to the questions that are coming.
Great. Thanks, David. Thanks to all of the panelists for providing those great intros to your businesses. So now we'll have kind of an open discussion. I'll pose some questions to the panelists, and the panelists can kind of feel free to kind of follow up on each other's comments and kind of engage with each other. So let's start with some local issues. So it would be interesting to hear about some of the specific challenges that each of you has faced in your business, kind of at the local level, working in Philly. So maybe we'll start with Jessica and Evan.
Sure. I have one perspective that might be different than Evan, but actually a challenge that we face in Philly, but also a few other cities, is customers getting their packages stolen. And that's something we have to figure out, because it's part of our mission to make this service extremely convenient and accessible. And if that is going to make it difficult for certain residents in certain neighborhoods to use the service, we're trying to think through how we can make that better. And I think the solution here in Philly has been making our service extremely personalized, to the point where members can actually tell us to put their delivery behind a plant, or we can get an actual lockbox for them and create a custom code so we can actually lock their stuff away. And I think that speaks to like the type of business that the Rounds is, because I don't know if like Amazon or these other like Grubhub, if they're able to get to that level of personalization. So I think that gives us an advantage. And from my perspective, that's something that we've been dealing with in Philly specifically.
Yeah, thanks, Jess. Just to add to that, so obviously the Rounds is currently operating in 4 cities, and each one has its own unique opportunities and challenges. So Philly, we have more house deliveries than other markets. Other markets, we tend to be more with apartment buildings, and so as Jess said, but on the other side, I think with each locale, there's challenges from the municipality, and then also potentially opportunities with other companies. And so problems we've had with Philadelphia City Recycling we're able to, kind of pick up with companies like Rabbit. And so I think there's kind of two sides to that. Similarly, David will definitely be speaking soon and seeing if we can kind of coordinate more on our logistics. Obviously, we have a lot of, shared members or members with similar interests. And if we're running similar routes, there could be potential to coordinate there. So I guess, Brian, to answer the question, I think the challenges and opportunities are kind of two sides of that same coin. And wherever municipalities fail, we find that there's other similar like-minded companies that are filling in those gaps.
All right. Matt?
Yeah, I piggyback off of Jess. We have a little trouble with containers being taken, stolen off of customers' properties, or when you are operating in a city and customers live in apartment complexes and such, there is more of a personal level on that delivery. And I'd love to talk to the rounds about some of the solutions we've come up with, because we're still trying to figure out some of them, but we have been able to work out ways we're able to get pickups of material in apartment complexes. And sometimes it depends on the landlord or the building owner. But I think as customers and as residents in these areas are moving more towards delivery services, I think landlords and building management are realizing that there are opportunities and maybe benefits to open up the availability of allowing certain things like this, which probably 10 years ago you wouldn't really think much of. I think also one of the challenges in the city is local level is just space. I think as we grow and our customer base grows, as we try to support them, one of the challenges is having the space for materials. We do have thresholds that we have to kind of keep numbers at, and we don't want to be shipping material out daily just to get it out of our shop. We want to make sure we have a large enough load that it's sustainable to leave on a big truck, or if it's freight or what have it. So I think local city challenges, lots of businesses probably would experience similar that we do, but on the service side, we are looking for some solutions on how to make sure that pickup is a lot cleaner, that smooth transition of putting something out or picking it up, just like Circle and just like the Rounds does. It's not always a clean exchange, and especially on a windy day, you can find your container kind of down the block. So sometimes that adds to some expenses.
Okay, yeah, David.
Yeah, so to piggyback on that, we Michelle and I had no idea how many buckets would be stolen when we launched the business, or how many buckets would disappear. At this point, we've built it in as an ongoing cost, and we do everything we can to minimize it. But you would think that maybe compost buckets wouldn't be as likely to be stolen as a bag from the Rounds or a tote from Rabbit, because we empty the buckets, and even if people are lining the buckets with paper bags, they still aren't perfectly clean when we empty them out. But they get stolen. Around 1% of our buckets get taken, and obviously we're trying to lower that number. So yeah, two challenges I'll mention in addition. One is regional composting capacity. And thankfully, there are stakeholders within City of Philadelphia and State of Pennsylvania working to create an urban composting permit and sort of change the way that composting sites are permitted. The permitting now for composting sites in State of Pennsylvania is really arcane, and it's similar to landfill permitting, which is pretty absurd. But there are many people interested, from private companies to municipalities across the state, and certainly Philadelphia, who want to increase composting capacity in the region. And then another challenge, I'll sort of piggyback. I'm not sure if the Rounds or Rabbit mentioned working with apartment buildings as a challenge. It sounded like both a challenge and an opportunity, but when it comes to composting, it's a huge challenge for us to work with larger apartment buildings or office buildings. There's been so many times that Michelle has been speaking with an office within a larger building, and we get to, she gets to level 10 with that particular office, and then one thing or another shuts it down, whether the building just says, sorry, there's absolutely no place whatsoever where you can keep composting toters or buckets, even though they might have a dedicated trash or recycling room, or they might have an extremely high insurance requirement. We have all the insurances that we legally need to have, but sometimes these insurance levels would bankrupt us from a cost perspective. And similar with apartment buildings, thankfully we have many success stories with apartment buildings where apartments, the building's management knows where the buckets are going, and customers are able to successfully place their buckets in those areas, and we're able to access them, whether we have a door code or a key, or they're just outside in a certain nook where we pull up. But we also have instances where we get started and the building's management actually throws away the bucket. And that's, it's defeating the whole purpose. It doesn't just, put the scraps into a landfill, but it puts the bucket itself into a landfill. So we try really hard to get ahead of that stuff before we get started with customers in any building. But unfortunately, still have many challenges there.
Okay, great. So we just talked a little bit about some challenges that your businesses face in Philly. Here's a question about kind of where Philly is kind of in relation to the kind of general effort to build a circular economy. So I'm curious whether you guys think that Philly is kind of ahead of or behind the curve in comparison with kind of other places that you might be familiar with.
I can jump in, and I'll be speaking on this in regards to the grassroots efforts that I've witnessed. So I think what really stands out about Philadelphia is how it's, and we all know it because we're here in Philly, it's very neighborhood centric city. And while at the very top, we have city council and we have government decisions that influence our day-to-day usage of trash and where it goes, I've seen these grassroots, community-centered groups, coalitions, nonprofits really step up to the plate and do stuff within their own neighborhoods and their own blocks. And I think that sets Philadelphia aside from a lot of other cities that don't really have that sort of local influence. I've seen it really come to life through a coalition called Circular Philadelphia, which I think all three of us are a part of. And it's basically a coalition of different individuals, businesses, organizations, and groups that are trying to build this circular economy through different industries, whether it's the textile industry, food waste, for-profit business. And I think being able to educate on the ground puts Philly ahead, because it really, at the end of the day, the people that are a part of the system are the people that live on the streets. And if they know that they have solutions like the rounds, rabbit, and circle, it does put us in a better place to, be more mindful of our trash usage. And then I'm also just thinking, connected to our whole conversation about things getting stolen, Philly, I feel there's a luxury in where there's amazing like-minded businesses that may not even have anything to do with delivery, but let's say it's like the cliffs at Callow Hill. We're partnered with this rock climbing gym at 10th and Callow Hill, and they were kind enough to let the rounds have that as a delivery drop-off location. And that just shows that even though it's a rock climbing gym and it's not directly related to sustainability, people have it on their minds and they're open to creating these partnerships. And so now we have like over 150 deliveries to the cliffs at Callow Hill every week, which is really cool. Yeah.
I'll just add quickly, Philly was, the perfect place to launch a business like the Rounds. Obviously in the early days, not everything goes perfectly smoothly. And I think our early adopter members have been extremely lenient and supportive in helping us shape what it needed to be. And so we just really appreciate that feedback and that encouragement as we've grown.
Yeah, I think Philadelphia really was one of our best opportunities when we looked at where we could I mean, we grew up here and we just saw as there are so many like-minded, sustainable individuals. I will say, I think where the city is behind is for the customer or for the residents that maybe aren't so sustainably driven, but just need some additional education on single stream recycling. I think a lot of our recycling, you're taught this in, at a young age, grade school, the basic paper, glass, metal, separate or not, depending on your municipality. But I do think that there is an opportunity for the city to say, look, there are businesses out there that are offering customers that are residents that are sustainable, like-minded, like Rounds, like Circle. But I think they need to continue to drive home the importance of, for the residents that may not be able to afford this or may not choose to use a service like this, just how important they can affect a single stream batch of just putting, if you put correct stuff in your bin and it gets bulk collected and compressed, if you do a good job and your neighbor does a good job, that stuff has a better chance. But right now, I think the city, as much as they do, just like Jess said, Circular Philly, it's an amazing organization that they put together to bring all these groups and people that care. But I think the city also should probably look at how we could help people that may not, may just do the bare minimum. And that actually is that's part of the issue, the contaminant from the people that just want to do the bare minimum. And you're going to get every aspect of every individual in the city. So you just have to understand who they are and how you can promote positive recycling and sustainability based on their life, and make sure that if the city has guidelines and implementations, that they're being taught and brought to neighborhoods, not just put out on newsletters about the city streets recycling, because I don't think that stuff can always drive home a message.
Yeah, those are all good points. Just to clarify something I said a minute ago, when I said 1% of our buckets are stolen, that's monthly. 1% of the total number of buckets we have on the street are stolen monthly, about 1 to 2%. So with regard to composting, I think it's all relative. If you compare Philadelphia to certain West Coast cities like San Francisco or Seattle or Portland, Oregon, they have municipal composting, and I think pretty successful programs. Whether the municipality handles it themselves or outsource. I know in Portland, Oregon, they outsource it all to a large company. I think that at least in our experience in Philadelphia, we're thankful that people we deal with who work for the city are realistic about what can and can't be done, and what could be done effectively. We were really upset when the zero waste and litter cabinet was disbanded when the pandemic hit. One of the key people who worked for the city zero waste and litter cabinet, Nick Esposito, is one of the co-founders of the organization that Jess mentioned, Circular Philadelphia, which there was a massive need for an organization like Circular Philadelphia. They're a nonprofit, and they work as advocates, connecting businesses like ours with the city, helping businesses like ours with navigating city regulations, but also just spreading the word about businesses like the Rounds, Rabbit Recycling, and Circle Compost to people across the city. But you look at speaking specifically of composting again, contamination is a composting company's worst enemy, or probably the worst enemy. I remember speaking to a much larger company once, and when this person, when he's asked what contamination level is acceptable in their compost piles, he said, well, if you're a vegetarian, what percentage of meat is acceptable in your diet? So that was his answer. You really want zero contamination. And I've read about pilot programs in New York City where they piloted a municipal run composting service to 300,000 households. And it was a nightmare because of just a crazy amount of contamination. So, educating the public, educating people about whether it's, what to put in the recycling bin and when to put out the recycling bin, or if the city were to either promote a composting service or partner with a third party to handle composting or try to do it themselves, making sure that people know what needs to go in that composting bin and what can't go in there. Because if people start putting their aluminum cans into their composting bin, it's a total nightmare. You might as well not even run the program. So thankfully, the people we work with and talk to within the city, I think they understand that education is key. They understand that before you can, really expand composting in a meaningful way as a city, you need to add composting capacity. So they're focused on helping that to happen. And even customers of ours who pay for our service, who they're doing it because they want to do the right thing. They want these organic materials and food scraps to not go into a landfill. We still get a decent amount of contamination, whether it's those mesh plastic bags that onions come in, or occasionally an aluminum can or a metal fork, rubber bands that are around the ends of their produce. The whole end of the green onions get thrown in with the rubber band. So in any case, yeah, I think it's all relative. But with regard to composting, I think people in Philadelphia who work for the city, who are involved in it, I think they have a realistic approach. And so far, we've been nothing but pleased with the engagement we've had.
All right, great. So the next question is about the challenges that your companies face in kind of convincing people that it's worth it to kind of pay for the sort of services and or products that you provide. So, these are things that people may not be kind of used to, paying money for, and, you have to sort of convince them that this is something that that's worth doing. So, yeah, I'm curious to hear about how these efforts have gone for you, what the main challenges are, and maybe if you have some experience kind of on the customer side, it'd be worth hearing about that too.
I'm happy to take this one first. I think we have a slightly different situation than some of the other companies here. The rounds doesn't really cost any more money. So that's one of our key pieces. What we really are doing is looking at that take, make, waste model and saying there's actually cost savings we can reap the benefit of and pass on to consumers by not doing that. And so literally just this morning for a board meeting, preparing the numbers, and for every container we take back and clean, we're saving money over putting that in new packaging. And so I think it's taking this conversation up to like a higher level. It's really like it's externalities when things aren't charged within an economic model that it feels like you have to pay more. But at the end of the day, what we're all trying to do is reduce the amount of waste, which should, in a perfect economic model, be saving money. And so I think just tapping into that, which from our side we're able to do pretty efficiently.
Yeah, that's a great point, Evan. And building off of that, but more so talking about the convincing aspect of, okay, if cost isn't a barrier, what could be a barrier to using the rounds? Something as a user myself, and for context, I was a rounds member, and then I connected with the founders, and then I became the marketing manager. So it all started for me as a member of the rounds. And something I was kind of like bearing with was sustainability is what I studied in my undergrad degree, and it's like my passion. So there's a lot of products that I use that are inherently reusable. Like I have a little towel that you wet with hot water and it takes your makeup off, and I just continuously wash that and reuse it. And then when I started getting stuff from the rounds, I was a little bit caught off guard because inherently some of the products that we offer are disposable. For example, we have Q-tips, they're compostable. So I could put them in my circle compost bucket, supposedly, but they are inherently disposable, which would be kind of negating the circular economy. So when I joined the rounds, I was like, hey, like what's up with the fact that we have some things like this that we end up throwing out into the waste stream? And the balance that we're striking, which I'm learning and which makes a lot of sense to me now that I'm on the ground and I'm in this member facing role, is there are certain people, and Matt was kind of talking about this, that they're not really sustainably minded. They maybe just want the convenience factor of our service. And if we didn't have 2-ply toilet paper or cotton rounds that they can use for their makeup, they actually just wouldn't use the service altogether. So it's this trade-off, because we'd rather them have access to our service and be able to reduce all the packaging waste that they would get at their local CVS or going to a department store. But there is this, like, the trade-off of the fact that some things are inherently not sustainable. But we've been able to pitch that in a way, it's like, hey, you know, we're not asking you to put all of your waste into a little jar and become like truly zero waste just yet. It's a process. And maybe as you use our service, you'll start to gear towards not using Q-tips and changing your lifestyle. I don't know, but we need to cast a wider net. So that's just an interesting like balance that we strike that is unique and lets us reach more people.
On Rabbit's side, I see the challenge. Our service costs money. It's not for everyone that can afford something like this, and we understand that. So we're kind of looking at this in 2 tiers. The one reason why we, have to negotiate this decision that we're making, where the price cost versus trying to offer this to a wide vast residency that we have in this area, is it is hard to recycling is hard. Recycling is a lot of work. Our shop workers are actually taking individual customers' containers and sorting them by hand, and some can take an hour, some can take longer, some can take less, and it's not easy and it's not automated. Our goal is to make more things automated and then train them on how to increase their operations and efficiency in this level. But the other way that we're trying to work with folks that might not be able to afford our service is we are starting to reach out to neighborhood associations and saying, look, there are some folks here that use your service already, or we've had some residents or neighborhood associations reach out to us and say, hey, how can we sort of make this a bit more of an equity stake in here, where some people that might not be able to afford your service, because we are asking for, it's a subscription or on demand. So if you use us once a month or you use us once a week, we understand that costs right now are high for everyone. So if we can find a way for people that might not be able to afford our system and basically bundle that in a neighborhood association where we're able to pick up with other folks, we're all for that. But the challenges of a small business is to keep staying afloat as we really push through all this. So if we can cut costs on our side, hopefully we can lower pricing. And we understand that this isn't for everyone. And if we can encourage people to just look for solutions to recycle, even if they don't use us, I think we're happy with that too.
Yeah, and from our perspective, we do our best to explain the problem in our messaging, and explain how people can be part of the solution. We offer a 30-day free trial automatically. Anyone who signs up, the first 30 days are free. Earlier on, people had the option where they could either sign up for a 1-month free trial or just sign up for paid service right off the bat. And occasionally we were having, or maybe a few times a month, we'd have someone sign up for paid service right away, and then realize after the fact that they could have done a free trial. So we would retroactively give them a free month. And then we finally just said, let's just give everyone the 30-day free trial. Let's make all that automatic. But other than explaining the problem and explaining how our service can benefit them, in addition to benefiting the environment, it can benefit them in certain ways. Like their trash is much lighter weight, like way lighter weight. The stuff we pick up is heavy. That's the heavy stuff. That your coffee grounds, food scraps. If you're putting it into trash that's bound for the landfill, that's the heavy stuff. That's the stuff that might leak when you're bringing the trash out to bring it through your Philadelphia row home. You don't have a an alleyway to bring it down. It's the stuff that if the city trash pickup gets delayed and it's sitting out front of your house on a 100-degree day in July, that's the stuff that is going to smell bad and potentially draw rodents and pests. So other than explaining to people how they can utilize our service to benefit the planet and also benefit them in certain ways like lighter trash, and we also give back finished compost every year. We just try to explain it as best we can, and we're not the greatest marketers. The other companies in this call are way better at marketing than us, but we just try to put the messaging out there and hope people will give it a try. I would say really that we don't like, I'll never try to convince somebody. I've been in conversations with people of all income levels, people who could afford, 50 times what we charge for service. And they'll look at me like blank face and say, you mean but I could just throw this in my trash can and not pay anything. I already have a trash can and the city picks up my trash. Like why would I pay you to do this? And that's it. I can't, you can't get over that hurdle. At the end of the day, people have to want to do it. And we want the people to want to do it because we don't want contamination, as I mentioned earlier. But yes, similar, I've had conversations like that with people, as I mentioned, all income levels. Could be the wealthiest person to someone who's, 100% paycheck and struggling. And frankly, I can understand why someone in that position can't afford to add on an additional expense. But when it comes down to it, we can only convince people so much to do something like Circle or Rabbit. The rounds, it's a little different. I mean, I'm a rounds customer. I'm also a Rabbit customer. But the rounds is, to me, is almost like a no-brainer. I mean, it's awesome. A lot of the stuff you pay for, it's less expensive than in a grocery store, and you have way less packaging. And they come deliver it to you and pick up your empties. So I don't know. For Matt and for us, I think we just have to do our best to explain the message and put the message out there, and hope that people will want to do it.
Yeah, and I want to just add to that too. That's also why I think companies like ours are trying to offer things on downstream where we can. I mean, if we can give the community some take back of certain materials, we're happy to do that. We really open our doors to any artist that comes in, and they've never paid a dime for what they've taken out of our shop. And we also encourage them downstream to give that material a second chance too. If you're giving it to somebody, we have small businesses come to us looking for packing material because the price of shipping and packing material costs so much money. And we can only do so much to continue to, assist and make that material go further and further. But it takes a lot of energy on us to keep this stuff out of a landfill. And we really see when our shop we've had customers take scrap material and scrap it up even more and give us back the smaller pieces. And then that stuff gets taken. So it's this residual material that as long as people are coming back, we feel like what we can't maybe offer in some ways, we can offer free material in another. And it's just one of the small things we could be doing. We could be doing more, and we're always going to try to, but we want anyone out there to know, whether you're a customer or not, if you're looking for stuff, come to our shop and you'll find something you might need.
And yeah, Matt, just to add to something you mentioned about working with neighborhood associations, we're working with a neighborhood association right now who applied for and received a grant towards sustainability for their immediate community. And they're going to use that grant to pay for our services for, I think 20 to 30 households immediately surrounding their neighborhood association headquarters. Anything like that that we can do to make the service more affordable or potentially free for people via, they kind of have to do the work to get a grant in that situation. As it'd be hard for us to do that for them. But yeah, anything we can do to help out communities. We want to see as much composting as possible done correctly.
I think the neighborhoods, especially in Philly, you'll see a lot of repeatability. Once one like West Philly has a very interesting connection to sustainability. I find a lot of their customers seem to, just come from the same thought process on how to reuse. And then if they pilot a program with their neighborhood association and another one's talking and finds out that that works, it could take off in a way that communities have some help in what we're doing, because we only have so much staff, and anybody that wants to, just find opportunities to get the message out and help reduce waste, no matter what company you're using. I think the neighborhood associations at least have a better understanding of what goes on around with their community than we do. And that's where we might rely on them to say, what could we do, and maybe what ways we can improve our service for a community instead of just the individual resident.
All right, great. So next, I want to ask each of you to talk a little bit about maybe one or two things that your company is kind of working on or kind of working toward for the future that you're particularly excited about.
I'll take this one. I have some fun ones. So right now, again, Rounds is a little bit in its infancy. All the containers and bags that get delivered to our members are expected to come back, as soon as they're no longer needed by the members. It's really just a trust-based system, and having early adopters and people that are invested in sustainability has certainly been helpful. But we're thinking about, as we grow and expand, and in the future, a lot of our members will be more interested in the convenience or the inexpensive pricing, but maybe not as interested innately in the sustainability angle. And so we're working on a number of pilots, and Philly, you'll be first to see some of your containers have QR codes on the sides of them. And it's a model that we are we'll be tracking the assets and actually able to know who has which particular container. And then we can use that information for a series of nudges and see what works best. So maybe it'll be as simple as saying, hey, Jessica, we know that you have 3 bags. If you're not using them anymore, we'd love to have them back. Like, that's how our system works. And then we can build onto that from there, build out rewards, badges, a little bit of gamification. So I think that's one of the places that we're really excited to test. And again, it'll be financially beneficial to everyone, but also like that's the core of our sustainability. It only works if we keep that loop closed.
So part of why I like these panels is because when some of these businesses come up with good ideas, I like to take some notes. So that, thank you, Evan. No, I think things as we get better with technology and things like QR codes and our customer demographic that's more into compatibility with things like that, I think it's a really great idea to, if someone's got access, to be able to get that off them and communicate quickly. That's really great. One thing we have right now, we have a small scale plastic shredder in our shop. It can do a decent amount, but it's more of a in-house shredder. We have a large shredder we're building that will be able to handle shredding plastic at larger scale, which will reduce volume and help us with capacity constraint issues. When you ship out plastic, most, as people know, post-consumer plastic gets bulky. It doesn't really compress, and you can fill up a recycling container with 5 or 6 jugs of some large plastic. So shredding reduces size. It allows availability to extrude mold and create different products out of your plastic that our community gives us. One of our ultimate end goals would be if the plastic our customers gave us would be made into the bins that we give our customers. And that would be a really, really great model of showing the full circular way of what you're giving us is in-house created our bins. So as Davis said, it's very pricey to have these bins run off on their own, or these buckets. So if we can make our own in-house, that would be great. The other thing we're trying to do is open up another community avenue for people interested in learning about different arts and skills from through workshops. So we're going to start having workshops in our facility where we'll invite experts in certain fields, whether it's textile, composting, services like the rounds, plastic shredding, sewing, anything like that. And basically you could be able to get certain certifications and take some courses where we can just offer local experts that are able to give out and share skills, whether it's through sustainability or just arts and crafts. We have a facility, we have the means, and I think we really want to start opening the education up to the public, where some of them we would just offer completely free, and as many people as we can fit that can learn, it would be great. And that's kind of how we'd like to evolve as we grow in the near future.
Yeah, for us, composting as a business, it's almost two separate businesses. One company could do both the processing of material, managing compost piles, and also the hauling, the picking up of the food scraps and other materials that get composted. So one company could certainly do both of those things, but they really are almost like two separate businesses. So for us right now, we're very focused on adding additional composting capacity in the region. And there are a number of many external factors that weigh into that. So we're really centered on that, and whether our company is involved in helping create a new site, or whether we partner with another organization who or create a separate organization, potentially organized as a nonprofit to manage a new site as regulations change, and as we're able to do so. Very much focused on helping in that effort to increase composting capacity in the region. And then on the other side, on the hauling side, we're speaking right now with a couple of other organizations in ways that we can potentially help them with hauling. Other like-minded companies, similar values, similar mission, involved in the recycling world, where trying to find ways where we can utilize existing assets. We're already paying for automotive insurance policies. We're already making a payment on our motorized vehicles. How can we utilize those assets further in ways that align with our values, and essentially lower our overhead as a percentage of our overall revenue.
All right, great. So let me now kind of ask a little bit about how you guys have thought about and kind of what your experience has taught you with regard to kind of how to go about making a business within the kind of circular economy sector, or using that model profitable kind of within the current marketplace.
I'm happy to lead off there. It's hard. For a company like ours, we started in 2016. We've been bootstrapped all the way. I'd still consider us bootstrapped. So getting to profitability when you're really hyper aware of your costs, and as your business grows, your labor costs increase. I'd say for us, probably the saving grace of the business from a pure business standpoint is the subscription model, because our revenues are very, very predictable. Without that, I don't think our business would survive. I don't think we would make it to profitability. We could potentially have an a la carte option. I know Rabbit offers both subscription-based or a la carte, but the subscription model is the key for us, knowing what our current revenue, our current monthly revenue is, knowing how that revenue is expected to grow based on growth projections. That's really the most helpful thing for us. So, in 2020, we turned a very small profit. In 2021, we had a very, very small loss, but we were still cash flow positive in 2021. So, I'm always, from a business perspective, I'm always more focused on the cash flow side of it. But it's not easy to be profitable, especially in a rising cost environment. if you're not also raising the cost of your service. So we have not increased our cost of household service since 2018. And we have seen so many increases in our costs. It'd be impossible for me to list them all. I mean, the buckets alone increased in cost every month. I would get we don't buy them every month, but I'd get a letter every month from our bucket supplier that the cost of buckets has increased. We do a lot of biking, thankfully, but gasoline for motorized vehicles, obviously, it's through the roof right now, and we have not raised our pricing since 2018 for households. We actually lowered our pricing on the commercial side about 6 months into the pandemic because we wanted more commercial accounts to come back to composting and to get into composting. And we knew the challenges that restaurants in particular were facing, whether it was, enforcing COVID protocols, just to keeping up with COVID protocols, to dealing with outbreaks among staff and keeping labor paid and rising labor costs. We know that they don't want to add on an additional cost, even though in some instances composting with us can save them money. So anyway, I guess that's not an exact answer to your question, Brian, but just to say it's very challenging. And I think you have to have some core element of your business model that is going to allow you to succeed and be financially sustainable in the long term. And for us, it's simply having predictable revenues. That's really what's allowed us to feel comfortable continuing to focus on growth and expand in a very challenging industry and challenging increasing cost environment.
Anyone else want to jump in here?
Yeah, everything Dave said, I agree. I mean, the costs are going up, and we actually introduced our subscription service at the beginning of the pandemic when we didn't know how well that would play in, but we knew that we also needed some predictable revenue that we knew we could forecast out. We were gaining some customers at a pace that we really, really enjoyed, but it wasn't necessarily knowing when the revenue was going to come in, because as our service for on demand, you could reach out to us, you could request a container, and we could possibly not hear back from you for several months because we don't really, for the on demand option, we allow our customer to fill it up at their own rate. Some people choose to just use something exclusively, one material, and not use the list of everything that we give them. So that part of it became a bit of a challenge. Now, most usually request a pickup within the month. So we started to track that better at that time. But cost of containers, just like Dave said, ours have gone up many dollars. I think it's almost doubled since we started on our large container. And if we break some in the shop, that expense just hits us a lot harder. Gas prices. We would love to be able to use a bicycle for our pickups. And we are going to probably introduce something this summer for our 5-gallon containers, just like just like Circle uses their container size. But with our business model, we allow customers to give us additional volume than what they just the container that we gave them. And because of that, we are limited in how we pick things up. So we are basically using multiple company vehicles, and we haven't been able to get any relief from the cost of that because it just drives up. We are looking for other options on doing by foot, just small pickups, especially around our neighborhood where our shop is. But we really seeing, any small business starting up is a challenge. A sustainable business, really, you're only going to get folks that are of that breed. And even for the rounds, who gets people that actually just want to kind of set and forget the things they need, it still takes certain individuals to kind of seek this. And I think it's a huge challenge for sustainable business in this environment. But I do feel that the customer base and the community that a lot of our companies have, I think that's kind of what's keeping us going. And we've been very lucky to do that. And I think we're hoping to continue that while we grow.
And just to chime in, thank you, Matt. Just to chime in on our side, we've been, we sell lots of different types of products, and we've been very diligent in studying, what the margins are on various products. We've been really lucky that we kind of found a sweet spot, particularly in Philly, with local products. And so that was maybe not one of the core offerings of the rounds, and we're always experimenting and trying new things. But we found that a lot of the local things like Compass Coffee and Bethesda Bagels. Oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong city.
That's easy. We're at Bean to Bean Coffee, Lost Bread Co., Merzbacher's.
Merzbacher's, yeah. That those items tend to have pretty good margins, and that customers are really into it, and it further supports our local, from around the corner type model. So, but we'll just continuously test new things. But that's been one of the places that we found to be quite profitable.
All right, great. Maybe I'll give you guys one more, and then since you guys have been doing such a good job answering the questions from the audience in writing, I'll come back to a couple of those at the end. But before we do that, maybe I'll ask each of you to say a little bit about any kind of regulatory issues that are significant that you've kind of come across operating in Philly or elsewhere, or that just face businesses in the circular economy more generally.
I think for recycling capacity and storage, I do think our regulations that as we grow, we're going to be more inundated with. I think in some sense, the city has seen us as a supplement and a nice way to reduce the volume of the material that their folks are picking up, whether it's through the trash or municipalities. We've got customers that will send us pictures of how much waste that they no longer put out for curbside for their trash because they're now cleaning that material, putting it in our containers. So I think once maybe we get a little more notice, we're going to start feeling the heat more, but we've done our best to track and weigh and calculate all the volumes of materials that leave our shop and what comes in. That way, once we're presented with the inevitable of having to, open up this data, we're there, we've got it. But I think as we start to expand to a secondary facility, and when you start dealing with storage and codes, the city will start getting their eyes on things a little bit more, which, we're ready for. I think at the scale we're at, maybe just we haven't had as much notice from that, but we're prepared. And I know once we go into other municipalities and townships, it's going to kind of vary, but building code usually based on states and local tends to ride the same. So we're just ready to jump with those challenges and hopefully face them with everything we have once they come.
Anyone else want to jump in on this or move on? Okay, so let me go to one of the audience questions. You guys all typed brief responses to this, but the organizers suggested that this would be a good one, and I think it's definitely worth maybe hearing a bit more of what you have to say. So this is David McCabe's question. So he says, sometimes exercising these sustainability practices can be a luxury for those with the means to pay for your services. How can you establish an equitable circular economy in Philadelphia that promotes ideals of environmental justice? Curious to hear if you guys have a little bit more to say beyond what you.
Well, I can jump in just to mention the city did create a community composting network, and it's limited, but it is free with regard to money. Nobody has to pay to participate in it. The initial cohort has 12 composting sites. The city received a grant from Comcast to make the program happen. We were involved. We wrote the initial drafts of a manual for these community composting sites to use. Unfortunately, even of the 12 initial sites in the cohort, I don't think all of them are fully operating, but the model is one where you have community sites, whether it's an existing urban farm or garden, or a school, or any other kind of organization that has a little bit of land. And the city came in and built a 3-bin system at no cost to that organization or garden or farm. And then you need, at least one, if not multiple, compost site leaders who the city then trains on how to manage these bins. And then, people in the immediate community can sign up to bring their food scraps to that location, but it's not a drop off. It's not like they can just dump it and leave. They actually learn how to do the composting within this 3-bin system. So these 3-bin systems, they have a capacity limitation. And this kind of thing does require work. There are roles at each community composting site for people who aren't fully able to do physical work. But with regard to the actual composting, that does require you to do some physical work. So it's not free from a time perspective, but it doesn't cost any money. I think that program, frankly, I would have loved to see more updates from Parks and Rec, who runs the program. But I just think that, we started on that before the pandemic, and it's seen some success at some sites, but I think it could be rolled out further. We talked a little bit about neighborhood associations applying for grants to help fund composting efforts. That's what comes to mind off the top of my head. I think that I've spoken to people who think that the city should just, roll out composting pickup for all residents. But I can tell you that it would be self-defeating. Unfortunately, it would really be self-defeating until a larger scale education effort could be made. Maybe some kind of an opt-in system could be created, and then the city could either outsource the pickups to companies like us or work on doing them themselves. But it's a big challenge to offer a free household pickup, and probably most of the people on this call, I know all the panelists are aware, but most of the people listening on the call, if you live in Philadelphia, you're aware that the city's had many challenges with regard to just general trash and recycling pickups. So it'd be really difficult to do something at a larger scale with regard to composting. The city has been good, as I've mentioned a few times, about helping to facilitate the process of potentially adding composting capacity, which is absolutely essential to doing any more composting, whether it's equitable or not. So that's been good to see.
All right. Anyone else? Yeah, Jessica?
Yeah, just a quick note. I think I appreciate David's question, and the way I'm thinking through it, I really manage the brand in Philly, and I'm our marketing manager, so I get to make decisions on where our budget goes. And since we're for-profit business and we're growing and we're serving members, there are certain people that may be outside our delivery zone or don't really have the infrastructure in place, like be a part of our deliveries. We'll sponsor events that are in the community, like cleanups or donation drives. Something I'm looking to do soon, which is really exciting, is think through if we have any excess products, which we sometimes get a little too much bread from Lost Bread Co. because we're projecting our growth and then we have leftovers. So how can we distribute that extra food among the community? So we're looking to work with, what is it called? I think Philly Food Drive, is that what it is? There's something like that they use, like the community fridges, and put excess food in those places, and then working with Helping Homies, which is a mutual aid fund, to deliver excess products to them bi-weekly or bi-monthly. So if our service itself can't be equitable for everyone, at least we can use our funds and our resources to distribute that wealth and that support to other members of the community. I feel like that promotes environmental justice from our perspective.
And one other note from a little bit more of a around central standpoint is we certainly have on our roadmap to be able to accept EBT for items that would be covered by that. So haven't been able to cover that yet, but it's on our agenda.
So beyond working with the neighborhood associations, which I think a lot of us are seeing that there's a benefit in really drilling down locally to these blocks and figuring out where we can help solve that. Similar to the rounds we've worked with, there's a company called Food Not Bombs out in West Philly. They take we get clean utensils, we get plastic utensils that are already in wrappers from customers. And one idea is you could take this utensil that's wrapped in plastic and it has its napkin, and you could deconstruct this. The plastics of polypropylene, the other plastic, the utensils, probably polyethylene, and then you have a napkin. So you could go ahead and then put that in with your composting, but there's a lot of energy to recycle material that already exists. So the other option is we reach out to these homeless shelters, we reach out to these organizations and say, what can we provide the bare minimum, even just utensils, even just paper plates that were, someone had a party and they bought an extra package and they ended up giving it to us because it was excess, and we're trying to get some of those things. So we kind of go between really the energy it costs to recycle material versus finding local solutions for that material. There's other pantry and other cabinet containers or vessels around the city where for women's products, if we ever get some hygiene products, we get things from all that are still in wrappers and unused. And at certain levels of income, certain people need things that a donation center might not take. So we really tried to, if we can't provide necessarily the service there and the association we aren't able to connect with, we can at least in these neighborhoods provide materials even at a bare minimum. And I think that, you know, like I said, we could do a lot more, but it's what we're doing right now. And some of these organizations reach out to us very often to ask us. Another example is we get backpacks that have broken zippers, purses, and items like that. So we've worked with Next Fab to repair backpack zippers. And we get a lot of office supplies, binders, notebooks, pens. So we are working with a local company that provides basically an all-inclusive backpack for children when they come back to school. So these, you know, would have your binders, have your loose sleeve, have your pens, pencils. And again, it might be the bare minimum that we can do, but instead of taking this stuff to a Goodwill or a donation center that might take this beyond Philadelphia, we can reach out to local schools and say, hey, you know, we've got staplers, we've got, you know, glue sticks, who wants them, and we'll get them in their hands because it's doing a lot better than the alternate.
Okay, so we just have a few minutes left, so maybe I'll ask kind of in closing for just maybe one brief thought from each of you about kind of where you see the kind of circular economy sector going over the next, say, 5 years or so. You know, developments that that you're excited about or you think are interesting or kind of important to note. So maybe go back to the original order and start with Jessica and Evan.
Sure. I'll give you my vision. I hope it's 5 years out, but I don't know, it might be longer. I think circular economy will become commonplace to the extreme that on your average street corner in New York City, you would have, you know, your landfill, your recycling, and then your reuse bin, and that brands will be collaborating more to make these things more standardized. So, you know, I worked on a big project with Walmart, CVS, and Target on kind of the retail bag, and we're starting to see that type of collaboration. Starbucks and McDonald's with cups. There's a lot of movement in that space. That's kind of on the business side. And then I would just, I guess, as a plea to those still on the call, you're voting with your dollars. And so I think supporting your local businesses and those that are doing things that you agree with, that's how everything moves in the right way. Government and business can only support things that people will put their dollars behind. And so I think we just need to lean into that more.
Great. Matt?
I don't see sustainable businesses going away. I see more opportunity and solutions for things that already exist. And I really think that one of the ways that we're able to really hone that in is continuing just to support these local businesses. There's a business that's not here I'll mention because they're amazing, but Bottle Underground, who takes bottles and recycles them, turns them into awesome stuff. I mean, companies like this, there are a lot of entrepreneurs that are eager to find solutions. And I think with the right mind and the sustainable drive that a lot of them have, I think consumers are moving towards that. You're never going to get, Tide or these large brands like Colgate to change their products, change the way that they build their packaging, unless consumers choose to pay through another option or they demand that from them. So companies like ours, hopefully, maybe if we gain more recognition, we can use our voice and say, look, you're making us all out of a number 7 plastic that really is so challenging to recycle and it costs so much money, but they're not going to hear it from us right now. It's the way the consumers are starting to drive the market. Cosmetic sustainability, there's all different industries that are now doing sustainable versions of material that's existed, since we started buying in retail. So I think the ingenuity is out there and people are going to see the alternate for different materials. And just like, no pun intended, but the milkman, glass was always used for years and years, and it was the best way to handle. You can recycle it basically indefinitely. And then we got away from that into plastic jugs. And I'm not here to say all plastic's bad. Some plastic needs to exist, but we have to find solutions for the stuff that does exist. And we have to reintroduce things that actually worked years ago that we're, tapping back into.
Yeah, I agree with what Evan and Matt said. I think that there's a lot of desire. I think as younger generations continue to get a little older, and whether they're taking positions at large multinational corporations like some of the ones Evan mentioned, or starting their own companies, I think it takes all stakeholders to be involved together, whether it's these large multinational corporations, municipalities, states, federal government, nonprofit organizations, for-profit companies like ours. There are some areas where you almost have to be a nonprofit and raise money to do certain things. But I do see it only. We have to do this. I mean, we have to do this because the majority of our habits as human beings are not sustainable. So we have to make this change or perish. And to close out. My thought on, I'll just tell a really brief story. One of the first farm partners I met with, that we still work with, when I went to the farm to meet with him, he said, for every person like me, or for every person like my wife or like me who wants to start a business to solve an environmental challenge, there are 10 people out there who want to open a brewery or a brew pub or start brewing beer. And there's nothing wrong with brewing beer. But basically his message to me was, for every one of me who wants to deal with the spent grains and compost the spent grains from the beer, there are 10 people who want to open up a brewery. So for anyone on the call, if you want to start a business and you can find a solution through a business. Look for problems that you can solve. There are no shortage of those out there.
All right, that takes us to the end of this discussion. Thanks so much to all the panelists for really interesting discussion. Thanks to the Risk Center again for organizing, and thanks to all of you in the audience for attending.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.